Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of To the Point. Today we're going to show you a framework for thinking about Dallas's comprehensive housing policy. And if you've been following the work of Opportunity Dallas, you'll know that our belief, which is based on evidence and research, is that a comprehensive housing policy is the single biggest thing we can do to drive better outcomes in our city. You can see those outcomes there. But we really believe that housing is the linchpin. And when I was at DISD, people would often ask me, what's the most important thing we can do to improve student achievement? And I would actually tell them, I think it's a comprehensive housing policy. Dallas doesn't have a comprehensive housing policy, but if you've looked at the rest of our website, you would know why this is a huge problem in many ways, and I won't rehash that. Today, the City of Dallas has a collection of tools at its disposal to shape the housing landscape, but they've largely operated in silos. There's not really a strong, coherent vision for it, and they're minimally resourced. And so events over the past couple years have really made it clear that Dallas desperately needs a comprehensive housing policy. So we've had issues with HUD. We've had to get in compliance with them. They've asked us to come up with a comprehensive housing plan. We know that half of Dallas renters and a third of homeowners are cost burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income on housing, which of course means you got less leftover income for other necessities like nutritious food or transportation or healthcare. Housing costs are a problem, as we know. In 2010, for example, approximately 80% of Dallas homes were affordable to households earning the median income. But by 2016, only 50% were affordable to those at the median income. Recently, Nationwide Insurance identified Dallas as one of the most troubled housing markets in the nation. We were the only top 40 market to receive this dubious acknowledgement. We know home prices are growing rapidly, and also the city's median income isn't keeping pace. That's a troubling combination that culminates in a bona fide housing crisis. The editorial board of the Dallas Morning News has consistently called for the writing of the city's first ever housing policy. So, several years later, we're in fall 2017 now, we still don't have a comprehensive housing policy. And I think a really smart, progressive housing policy would be a once-in-a-generation opportunity to really improve lives at population scale. So at Opportunity Dallas, we're trying to continue pushing on this front. And to that end, we've published a framework for Dallas's comprehensive housing policy. People know we need a comprehensive housing policy, but few have articulated what that could actually look like. What are its key ingredients and why? What are we actually talking about when we say comprehensive housing policy? We've had plenty of studies, reports, commissions, indicators. We need real policy action now. We've had various groups that have issued policy recommendations, the Real Estate Council, Inclusive Communities Project, Habitat, and those recommendations tend to focus on the organization's area of interest, whether it's fair housing or neighborhood revitalization or incentives for real estate developers to do affordable housing. But the reality is that a comprehensive housing policy incorporates all of these perspectives. And so what we've tried to do at Opportunity Dallas is bring all of those perspectives together in this framework, which you can access on our website. And I want to walk you through this document because if you're interested in housing policy, I think that this can be a really good primer of what does a comprehensive housing policy actually look like. So let's go through the framework, and I want to show you what's in there so that you can start digging yourself. So the framework starts with a table of contents, and then there's a message from me. And then there's an executive summary where we share interesting data about concentrated poverty, segregation, growing up poor in Dallas, the lack of housing affordability. And then we walk through the 4 policy domains. And this is how we bucket our recommendations. That if we had recommendations in each one of these 4 domains, we would have a comprehensive housing policy. So let me zoom in here so you can see it. So the first thing is increasing access to high opportunity areas so that moderate and lower income folks can access and afford quality housing options in them. All right, research shows that when low income kids are able to access higher opportunity neighborhoods, their life outcomes can improve dramatically, which helps break cycles of generational poverty. Second, we got to foster inclusive development in gentrifying areas. Basically, we need to manage gentrification better. It's possible, but you just need policies. Now, you can have development which brings in additional job opportunities and resources and services into disadvantaged areas, but you also need policies that put guardrails on gentrification so that you don't have involuntary displacement of existing residents, so that they can stay and they can experience the fruits of progress. Third, we just need a bigger supply of affordable and mixed income housing throughout the entire city. This will require larger commitment of public and private resources than we have today. It's also going to require thoughtful policies that incentivize the private market to construct and preserve mixed income housing. You know, housing production, it's a private sector action largely, but there are policies that can help shape private sector behavior to both enable market returns and promote the public good. And then finally, we have to holistically revitalize high poverty communities. The scale of the concentrated poverty problem in Dallas is incredibly large and severe. Quite frankly, there just aren't enough high opportunity areas in the city, and there are many neighborhoods which aren't remotely close to natural market development. So here you need a spark, and it can't be slapdash investments. You got to do it right. So then we go down and we talk about our current housing tools. Like I said, the city of Dallas has a collection of tools, but they largely operate in silos. There's not a real coherent strategy which drives it, and they're fairly minimally resourced. And so then we move into each of the 4 domains that I talked about. So the first domain is increasing access to high opportunity areas. And here you'll find recommendations like eliminating voucher discrimination so that lower income families can access opportunity areas. We talk about each one of these recommendations. Then there's a regional housing voucher mobility assistance program to increase the pool of opportunity areas by including the whole region. There's city involvement in leasing arrangements, sublease and guarantor programs. Basically, the city would sublease or guarantee an apartment for a voucher holder to provide more assurance to landlords. There's creatively marketing available units, ramping up counseling services across the city, incorporating the Office of Fair Housing into decision-making, placement policy on low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC, where we put LIHTC. It's a controversial topic, been the subject of a recent Supreme Court decision. I think we need more clarity around that. Then we move into domain 2, how do you manage gentrification better? The first recommendation here is an early warning system. The problem with gentrification is that by the time people notice it's happening, it's too late. An early warning system tells you which neighborhoods are susceptible to gentrification early on, and then that would trigger certain policy responses, such as home improvement and repair programs, help folks stay in their homes, homestead preservation districts, a state law that could actually help. The HB 2480 model, this is State Rep Eric Johnson's bill from the last legislative cycle, deals with affordable housing, property tax relief, proportional infrastructure spending, relocation assistance. The concepts that are embedded in this legislation would also work at the local level. Targeting the city's Homebuyer Assistance program, basically helping moderate to lower income families own homes, go from renters to homeowners, build equity, stay in place amid gentrification. And then there's the concept of community land trusts, a very promising model, not widely used in Texas, but basically you're taking away the cost of the land from the homeowner, which makes the home more affordable. So we talk about all that. Then we move into domain 3, how do you increase the supply of mixed income and affordable housing? We talk about the supply shortage. And the first recommendation, I think the biggest thing, is voluntary inclusionary zoning, providing incentives to developers to include affordable set-asides in their market rate developments. Like I said, housing production is largely a private sector action, but what public incentives can promote more affordability? Incentives like subsidies, density, height bonuses, tax abatements, parking easements. We outline all of those. And to really incentivize the private sector, you're going to need a dedicated revenue stream. That's why we call for the creation of a Dallas Housing Fund in the next recommendation. We need more public resources to help promote affordable and mixed income housing. Our existing public resources toward this issue is paltry. We need to raise local dollars like many other cities have. Then we move into talking about accessory dwelling units or granny flats. And people laugh when I say that, but it's probably the quickest and lowest cost way to rapidly accelerate the supply of affordable housing. It doesn't cost the city much at all. It breaks up exclusionary zoning. It empowers homeowners. So ADUs can be a really promising strategy. Creative use of publicly owned assets. How can the city, DISD, and DART and others think differently about the land it already owns to promote affordable housing? We talk about the design of mixed income housing. How you design the community impacts the outcomes, right? Common spaces, private spaces, the way the units are distributed within the complex, all of that matters quite a bit. And then we move into domain 4, holistic revitalization of high poverty areas, perhaps the most difficult challenge. So our first recommendation there is to go deep with a few holistic revitalization plans. And this is a big one. Dallas, we tend to divide our economic development money by city council district, which spreads the resources too thinly, right? We divide by 14 council districts. But we know that it's insufficient to fix one or two aspects of a disadvantaged neighborhood that's been in concentrated poverty for generations. You need an all-in approach, which this section outlines. And I've lost track of how many revitalization areas we have. Our recommendation is pick fewer areas and go deeper with limited resources. We also talk about the purpose-built community model, a promising national model of revitalization that we ought to look at. It emphasizes mixed income housing, cradle to career education, and community wellness. So there's a lot in there around purpose-built communities. We also talk about addressing problem properties, vacant, abandoned, tax delinquent properties. They're all over the place in South and West Dallas. So this section talks about land banking and infill development and how these problem properties can actually help rejuvenate neighborhoods. Then we go into the limitations of housing policy in revitalization. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than a housing policy, so we have to understand the limitations. We talk about catalyzing private investment. Obviously, we need to marry public and private resources. And then finally, this is something that's included in every domain, but we need a racial equity assessment at the city. You can't talk about housing without talking about race. So when this council votes on a particular policy, we need to be explicit about the racial impact it's going to have. For example, when we're talking about voucher discrimination, we need to be clear that 9 out of 10 voucher holders are people of color. And that needs to be on the table. It needs to be spelled out. So that's the framework for a comprehensive housing policy. If you're interested in learning more, I'd urge you to read it. We've had good feedback about it, and folks have found it helpful. So it's just a starting place. The city is a little bit further on some of these recommendations than others, but Opportunity Dallas has put together a policy task force, so roughly 40 people, content experts, community stakeholders, fair housing advocates, developers, urban planners, residents, university folks, to really try to flesh all this out. They meet every 2 weeks, and so don't take this framework as the final word. I mean, this is a work in progress. But I think it's really important that if we're going to talk about a comprehensive housing policy, that we should have at least some idea of what its ingredients are. And that's what this framework tries to show. So again, you can access it on our website at opportunitydallas.org, the framework, and you can download it right there and check it out. Thanks.